Okay, welcome back. We will be looking at planning and operational variances in particular now. If you take a look at this, see, the idea is that with APM, we are in APM, so we need to be considerate of what APM demands. And with APM, one of the most important aspects and half of your syllabus is always talking about planning and control. Now, controlling means you have a plan, and then actuals are happening in a certain way, and then you want to make sure to the best of your ability that the actuals are within your control, that things go your way, things go the way you want them to go. Part of exerting that control is regularly monitoring how far you have deviated with your plan, which is what we call a variance, and then trying to address that by variance analysis. And there are so many variances that you can analyze and learn from, and use intelligence to come up with decisions, which all has been looked at. We briefly looked at that aspect of introduction to variance analysis in the previous video. Now, where does planning and operational variances come into play? See, what happens is, normally businesses, they have a plan, they have an original plan, and then when things change, especially, I think the best example you can take is the last few years, with COVID and pandemics and that and this and earthquakes and tsunamis and all that. What happens is that your original plans don't stick for a very long time period because of various reasons. You tend to change your plans, and these plans, when changed, which we generally call them revised plans. So you had an original plan, and then you had the revised plan. Now, what happens is the concern comes saying, if you want to calculate your actual variances, are you going to compare your actual with your original plan, or are you going to compare your actual with your revised plan? Right? So someone might actually benefit by comparing the actual with the original plan, even though the plan was revised. Someone could say, no, the best thing to do is because you revised the plan, how can the original plan be relevant anymore? You should be comparing it with the revised plan. So this debate is what led to the identification of planning of variances versus operational variances. It's a fairly straightforward concept, but very high level, very, very good, very beneficial to use in business, because planning and operational variances actually gives us the opportunity to break this barrier and come up with different figures for the planning issues and the operational issues. How does it do? You can go through the reading here, but to give you a better and easier understanding, here we go. A planning variance is the difference between your original plan versus the revised plan. Very simple. So here I've used the term standard because this is from P2 at standard costing, but it's you have an original plan and you have a revised plan. You compare that, you get the difference, you call it a planning variance. So there are nothing regarding operational aspects, people actually doing the work, nothing is there. This is only planning related, and it's just numerical work, Excel based or whatever, estimations, calculations. It's only planning aspect. The actual work hasn't gone into any of it. The operational variance is, okay, fine, you had a plan, fine, you updated it, right? So now the most relevant plan is not the one you originally had. Now the most relevant plan is the one that you currently have, the revised one, the changed one, the updated one. So what you do is you take that changed plan and you compare it with your actual, what you normally would do in standard costing if you hadn't revised it. You take your revised plan and then compare it with your actual, and then you call it operational variances. That's what this does. So what does this help us do? It helps us break down things very clearly. It gives accountability, because the planning people, if they had made errors, all of those errors will now be reflected in the planning variance only. That won't come into the operational variance. And the people who actually work, all of their efforts, and whether they did better or whether they did worse, whatever that effect, will be reflected only in the operational variances. So what happened here is that it allowed, or planning and operational variances allows us to clearly make the relevant people accountable for their own variances without letting each other blame. Because what happens is, if you don't break this down and if you just calculate a total variance like original plan versus actual, then people are going to blame and point fingers at each other saying, hey, it was the planning team's mistake, or the planning team will say, no, it was the operational team's mistake, etc. So now you break it down, no blaming, we know exactly what happened. That's the whole point of it. So you can essentially, what happens is that with the planning variances, it's the planning team, they were the ones who revised the plan. So you're really looking at a plan revision and how much control, because that's just a plan. You can have plan A, plan B, plan C, plan D. You can have any number of plans. So most of these variances that get categorized as planning variances fall into the uncontrollable aspect because you've just been planning. But the operational variance, which is the up-to-date plan versus the actual work, actual effort, and actual sales or whatever, that is directly related to the work that happened on behalf of the company. So that will be factors within control because it's the people who are actually working and getting the work done. So their work is within their control, and therefore you can attribute it to them. So just because you cannot control the planning variances doesn't mean that accountability is lost. If you have major or big or huge planning variances, and you had to initially revise plans, in such a way that it's horrifying, then unless there is like pandemics and unforeseen matters that forced you to change your plans, unless that is the case, you can understand that your planning team's quite bad at their job. So you might have to bring in better people in order to do your planning better. Yes. So on that note, you can actually go through some of the advantages and disadvantages. As I said, one of the biggest benefits is the accountability, and each team, the planning team and the operational team, can respectively focus on their work alone without worrying about having to point fingers at or getting blamed by the others. Um, Disadvantages, of course, is that the breakaway of the values can actually can actually kind of hit back uh, something unexpected, because what will happen is that sometimes people will actually say, especially the operational team, they can say that we had a plan and we were going there, but since you revised it, it had a mental effect on us. We were demotivated. You had a plan of, you said first to sell 100, and then after 2 months we were planning for 100. Everything we had done was to sell 100, and then you're suddenly saying we should be selling 210. We weren't ready for that. Everything we did, all the preparations we did, all of the marketing, all the branding, all of the sales pitching, everything that we did was to sell 100. So now, since you upgraded the plan, doesn't mean that we can attain it, and you can't penalize us for that. Especially, they can blame it if the revised plan came later. Now, if your original plan was in January for the year, and then you quickly revised it by February, you had a revised plan, easy. But if your revised plan for the year comes by June or something, then they're going to say, look, half of the year is gone. You can't revise the plan now. Of course, there might be some truth to it, but this kind of blame, this kind of issue can crop up. End of the day, so you have to manage it. It depends. It really depends on the leadership of the company, and that is how planning and operational variances get used. Um, and we wrap the variance aspect there, and by end of itself, that's bulk of your budgeting discussion and planning discussion. We will be moving beyond budgeting, and we will be looking at some of the simple calculations for estimations in the next couple of segments. Thank you so much. I'll see you soon.